Good morning, CPC kids and families, and welcome to another episode of CPC Kids Live. My name is Daniel. I am a pastoral resident here at Central Peninsula Church, and I'm super excited for you guys to be with us today. This past week we had a holiday, if you didn't know. It's kind of a special holiday. We don't really talk about it very much. It was Earth Day. And we thought we would talk a little bit about what Earth Day is, but instead of me telling you, I thought some of my friends could tell you about it. So here they are.
Hi everyone, the very first Earth Day celebration was 50 years ago on April 22nd, 1970.
The idea to have a whole day to celebrate our planet was first pitched nearby in San Francisco.
On Earth Day, we want to remember that God made the Earth and all the people on it, and we want to help take care of that.
That is right. Thank you, guys. Yeah, Earth Day is a cool holiday because it reminds us that God gave us this planet and that we want to take care of it and take care of the people on it too. So with that, I want us to get into our game for today. This one, you guys are going to play at home. We're not going to play here because it's just me. But we are going to be playing the Old Testament Story Emoji Challenge. So you guys at home are going to see some emojis pop up on the screen. And those emojis are going to hint at an Old Testament story. Could be Daniel in the Lion's Den, Jonah and the Whale, any other number of stories. I'm not going to tell them all because I don't want to spoil it, but get your thinking caps on because here we go. Welcome back. How many of those did you guys get? I think I got at least 3 or 4, but maybe you guys did better. Hopefully you enjoyed our game, and now as we move forward, I think we need to get into our very special worship time. So all you kids at home, get up on your feet and let's get into it.
Everywhere that I go, you're there with me. Even in the night when I cannot see, I know you're by my side and I will be just fine. Oh God, you're always good to me. I wanna say thank you, thank you. I will live my life to praise you, and lift you high. Every night and day I'll follow in your ways. I wanna say thank you, thank you. I wanna say
Hello, CPC Kids, and welcome. We are so glad to be with you this morning. My name is Kevin, and I am one of the pastors at Central Peninsula Church, and we're really excited to be joining you this morning right from our home. This is where we live, and I know all of you are watching this in your living rooms as well, and so we're excited to be with you. And I must introduce you before we begin, my co-host.
Madison.
This is Madison. This is my daughter, and Madison, how old are you?
8 3/4.
8 3/4. And we are excited to be able to share the Bible story with you. So I'm going to have Madison help me a little bit. And I hope that you follow along as well. So if you don't, grab your Bibles. Parents, maybe you can grab a Bible and follow along as well. That would be really good. But before we jump in, I have 2 questions that I want to ask you and that you all can think about too. Okay? Madison, first question. What has been your favorite part about Shelter in Place?
Oh my gosh. That's a hard one. Because there's so many things. Because I done, like, all the things.
Name one.
More family time, because back then I didn't really get many
Yeah, family time. Yeah, that's really good. We've all been getting lots more family time, which has been really fun. We've been able to eat lunches together and eat dinner together, and that's been really, really good. And breakfast, all the meals we've been able to eat together, which is fun. I know I've been enjoying that. I hope you all have been enjoying maybe the extra family time as well. And then Madison, one more question, and this one will help us launch into the Bible story for this morning. And so I want you to answer this, okay? Have you ever thought you understood something, but then when you tried it, you realized you actually had no idea what you were doing?
I once asked my parents to make mac and cheese, and I screwed up the whole thing. I had to start a new box.
So making mac and cheese, that's one where you maybe have watched us make it. You thought you knew how to do it, but then you actually didn't understand it at all.
I screwed it up.
That's a pretty good one. Well, for me, I've got one too, okay? So I remember my wife and my brother-in-law were playing Mario for like a long time, and they got over like 100 lives. And I was sitting there and I was watching, and then I decided I would try. They had to go to the store. And I jumped in, and I thought I knew what I was doing. And within 30 minutes, I had lost every single life they gained. And so I clearly, once I joined, had no idea what I was doing. But that can be really frustrating sometimes. I think when you were making mac and cheese, or when I was trying to figure out Mario, or whatever the example is that you came up with, there's this idea that when we think we understand something, and then when we find out we had no idea, it can be really embarrassing at times. It can even seem a little humiliating. And so that can be really difficult to understand. And so I want us to kind of hold that, because those are really good examples, and I hope that you were able to come up with some examples as well. Because as we look at this story, which comes just a couple weeks after Easter, we're going to look at a way that some of the followers of Jesus before thought they understood who Jesus was and what he was about, but in reality, they didn't fully understand it either. So, if you have your Bibles, let's head to the book of Luke. Madison is already there. I'm going to get there in my Bible.
I was prepared.
You were prepared. Apparently I wasn't. But I hope that you've got a Bible. If not, go ahead and just go run and grab one real quick. But we are going to be in the book of Luke, chapter 24.
No, it's 23, half 24.
It's going to be chapter 24, verse 13 is where we'll be. So, Luke 24, verse 13 is where we're going to start. But before that, I want us to kind of figure out where we're at in this story, okay? So, 2 weeks ago, Madison, what did we celebrate?
Easter!
We celebrated Easter, and I hope that you all had a great Easter celebration. But Easter is this incredible story, right, about that Jesus being resurrected. And so we come through the cross, we come through Jesus dying on the cross, and then 3 days later, on that Sunday, Jesus rises from the dead, and we celebrate that on Easter. So, the story we're at in the book of Luke is going to pick up later in the same day that Jesus rose again. Okay? So let's check it out. So Madison, we're going to start in Luke 24. Can you read verses 13 through 14?
Let me see. I want to see what 14 is. To mark that. There it is. The same day, 2 of Jesus' followers were going to the village called Emmaus.
Emmaus. The village called Emmaus.
Okay. It was about 7 miles from Jerusalem.
Good. So we pick up the story right here, and there's 2 followers of Jesus who they're not part of the 12 disciples that we may have known before, but they're walking away from Jerusalem, which is where Jesus had just died and just was resurrected. And so it's kind of interesting that we think about, why are they walking away from Jerusalem? So let's keep reading. Read verses 15 and 16 now.
Wait, okay, not 14, okay. As they talked about those things that Jesus himself came up and walked along with them.
But God kept them from recognizing him. Yeah.
I'm not saying that.
That's okay.
I thought it was 17.
We'll let it slide. All right. So here's what's happened. This is kind of a crazy part of the story, right? Is the two are walking, and as they're walking, Jesus comes up behind them and along with them, but it says that God didn't let them or didn't allow them to recognize him, which is kind of strange. So, think of it as, again, imagine you're these two. You're walking, this guy comes up alongside, and you have no idea who he is. But think about it, I wonder if, there was, what was the disguise like? How did God not allow them to recognize Jesus? Because they were followers of Jesus. They knew Jesus. And so this is where it gets kind of interesting, because at this moment, the conversation takes a pretty interesting turn. So, Madison, let's read verse 17 and 18.
Jesus asked them, "What are you talking about as you walk along?" They stood and they stood still, and their faces were sad.
You're okay. One of them
were named
Cleopas.
He said to Jesus, "Are you the only person who's visiting Jerusalem? Jerusalem, who doesn't know?
And keep on one more verse.
Don't you know about the thing that happened there in the last few days?"
Good. So, these guys are just shocked because they're walking on the road and Jesus had just died and they didn't know about the resurrection yet, but they had just died. And so there was all these crowds. It was a pretty crazy moment. And so they kind of assumed that everyone in the entire world would have known about what was going on. And so they walk up and they're like, "Are you the only person in this whole area that doesn't know what just happened in the past few days?"
Wait,
so these
that?
guys are just shocked about it. All right, so let's keep reading and let's see what unfolds. So Madison, read verses 19 through 20.
Okay. What thing Jesus asked about Jesus of Nazareth? They replied, "He was a prophet. He was powerful in what he said and did in the sight of God and all the people. The chief priests and our rulers had Jesus over to be sentenced to death. They nailed him to the cross."
Okay, so now these two men are telling Jesus, who they don't know is Jesus, about all that had happened, about how Jesus was arrested, handed over to the chief priests, and then that he was nailed to the cross. And so here's, I think, why they become so sad. So let's read in verse 21. And this is a really important verse, so make sure to pay attention. Verse 21, just the first part of it, the first sentence.
Okay, where? Oh no. Okay. But we had hoped that he was the one who was going to set Israel free.
Good. So here's, I think, why they got so sad about all the events that had just taken place, is they believed that Jesus was the Messiah. And so they had put all their hope in Jesus being the one who was going to overcome. See, they were tired of being oppressed. They were tired of suffering, of hurting. And they thought Jesus was going to be the one that was going to overcome that he was the Messiah. And so they had put their hope in him. Now, Madison, I want to ask you a question, and maybe this is a good question for you to even think about at home, is what is something that you had maybe put your hope in and then it didn't come true, or it didn't happen?
Well, once I hoped that, let me think actually, because I don't know if that's the one. I don't.
Well, you were telling me earlier about one, how you had often you hope that Adley would help you clean your room, but she doesn't often do that.
By herself.
Yeah, you hope that she'd do it by herself. And there's something when that happens, right? When we put our hope in something and then that doesn't happen, it does make us sad. It makes us maybe a bit frustrated and a bit maybe confused as to why that wouldn't have happened. Well, the same is true with these two men. See, they had hoped that Jesus would be this sort of king that would overcome and destroy their enemies. So, here's what they thought. Right? They thought that Jesus was going to be a warrior king who destroys his enemies.
No.
That is what they thought. right?
I don't think that's true.
Well, let's keep figuring out what happens, okay? So they had long believed that Jesus was going to be this warrior king who would overcome that, right? And so for them, they had lost their hope because Jesus died, right? Like a warrior king isn't supposed to die. Someone who's going to destroy his enemies wouldn't do that through dying. And so they were really frustrated, and they really lost a lot of their hope in that. And so that's part of why they were so sad. So we'll return to this in a second, and we'll see what happens. But Madison, why don't you read verse 26 and 27?
26 and 27. Let me find it. Can you point it out for me? I'm really bad at finding numbers now.
Right here.
Didn't the Messiah have to suffer these things and then receive his glory? Jesus
Explain.
explained to them what was said about himself in all the
scriptures.
He began the Moses and all the prophets.
So this is really cool. So now, Jesus, it says, didn't the Messiah have to suffer these things? And then he retells almost the entire story of the Bible to them, where he describes all that led up to Jesus Jesus as the Messiah needing to suffer. And so he tells the whole story. And then it goes on, right? It says that as they kept walking, Jesus would invite them for a meal, and Jesus would take bread and he thanked it, and then he had this whole communion, this whole meal with them, and suddenly they were able to recognize him. So it was like he came out, like he took off the mask of disguise, and these two people realized that that was Jesus right there with him this whole time. So right then, though, at that moment, maybe one of the most surprising things happens. Right as they realize it, Jesus disappears. He's gone. And so the people, the two guys are like, what is going on? They're all confused about that. But let's read all the way down in verse 32. So you might need to turn your page.
Thanks, Dad.
Verse 32, right there.
I don't think I'm prepared
Go
now.
ahead. You got it. Verse 32.
They said to each other, he explained to us the scriptures meant. Weren't we excited as he talked with us on the road?
And so the men get up, and even though they begin to realize what Jesus had said and who he was, and so they get up right then, even though it's the night, and they walk 7 miles back to Jerusalem, and they begin to tell everyone they know that Jesus is alive, that Jesus was in fact the Messiah. And so what's interesting is they learn about their hopes. Right? And Jesus kind of upsets all of that, okay? And so instead of Jesus being the warrior king who destroys his enemies, what they learned about this King Jesus was that he's not a warrior as much as he's a servant.
Wait, he is?
And so this servant idea is that he came to serve others. And so he's that Jesus is the servant king who not destroys his enemies, but what Jesus does instead of destroys is he loves his enemies. And he does this totally upside down thing where he takes the warrior king aspect, flips it upside down, and he says, the way that my kingdom operates is actually through service and through love. And so Jesus comes not to destroy his enemies, but to love his enemies. And he did that through dying on the cross. And so not only does he give his life for us and his friends and those, but also for his enemies. And so Jesus is the servant king who loves his enemies. Now, this is completely upside down from everything we know, everything that we understand about the way kingdoms and kings operate. And so what's interesting is, this is a pretty humbling moment because it takes a lot of humility for us to understand the difference in our hopes. That so many times our hopes are in the wrong things. And so we have to realign them with the way that Jesus is, which is things like the first will be last, through death comes life, all those sorts of things where Jesus gives his life for our sake. And so it's humbling for us to understand that. But here's the reality, is even though Jesus completely flips the idea of king upside down, we can trust him because we know that he knows us best and that he's good. So this is the surprise. This is what we're talking about. And so I think what would be good for you now is maybe just spend a few moments, and we're going to throw a question up on the screen, and I'd love for you to talk about with your family. But the question is this, is what have you discovered about God that surprised you? And so I want you to be able to do that. So in a moment, we're going to do that. But first, I want us to pray, and we'll pray to close our time here. And then we actually have another worship song too. So after the time that you discuss with your family about what is one thing you've discovered that surprises you about God, then we're going to sing one more worship song after that. So Madison, do you want to pray or do you want me to pray?
I want to pray.
All right, go for it, Madison.
Dear Lord, as we understand you through these spots, We know that you're with us. We know that you're with us. You're not a warrior, you're a servant, and you love your enemies. And we have to learn that. We might have enemies, but we still have to love them. We have to love everyone for this time, for this love. And help those doctors out there and those people in the coronavirus. Help them feel better and help all those doctors and nurses try not to get hurt. Amen.
Amen. Thanks, guys. It's so good to be with you. See you guys later.
Bye, CPC.
Even before the sun and stars caught fire, even before the earth and sky were made, you had a purpose and a plan for my life. You held my heart and you knew my name. So I will walk in the plans that you have for me. I will follow, trust and obey. No matter where this journey may lead me, I know you are good always. From highest mountains to the deepest oceans, you have created everything we see. And still you made me unlike any other. Nothing compares to your love for me, no. I will walk in the plans that you have for me. I will follow, trust and obey. No matter where this journey may lead me, I know you are good always. Fearfully and wonderfully created, we're all masterpieces to show the world the love of God. Fearfully and wonderfully created, we're all masterpieces to show the world the love of God. Fearfully and wonderfully created, we're all masterpieces to show the world the love of God. I will walk in the plans that you have for me. I will follow, trust and obey. I will walk in the plans that you have for me. I will follow, trust and obey. No matter where this journey may lead me, I know you are good always. I will walk in the plans that you have for me. I will follow, trust and obey. No matter where this journey may lead me, I know you are good always. I know you are good always. I know you are good always.
All right. Thanks, Kevin and Madison, for reminding us about why humility is so important and about how Jesus turned everything upside down. This is the last Sunday of our month, so next week we'll be in a new theme and a new section. So I wanted to go over our memory verse one more time. This is your guys' last chance, so make sure you memorize it this week. And you can say it to your parents, or if you want, you can have your parents record you saying it, and you can send it to us on our Instagram or our Facebook, where you can connect with us, because we want to see you guys learning the verse and memorizing it along with us. So I'm going to see if I remember it, okay? It is Philippians 2:3, and it says, "Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves." Wow, I got it. Yeah, so go ahead and memorize that this week, and I hope you guys have an awesome week. Remember to subscribe to our channel here and like our videos. That helps us get seen by other people, and we will see you guys next week. Bye.